Welcome to our Sunday morning get together. It looks like we have a couple of announcements today. October the 13th, which is what, next Sunday? Next Sunday. We're having Spirit on the Lake out at Weatherby Lake. So no service here. We want y'all to show up at the lake and be happy and enjoy the weather. Hopefully it'll be fabulous.
There's directions back here, Bart, on the back table. So there's a half sheet that you can get the directions to get there if you don't know how to get to the pavilion. And in case it's cold, the doors come down on the pavilion. So
that's good to know. I'm going to carry a blanket with me just in case. If any of the Riverstone residents would like to attend, somebody from our community would be happy to arrange transportation for you, so just let us know.
And there's a sign-up sheet by the snack area for you all to sign up for transportation.
And what are we bringing? Side dishes?
There's a sign-up sheet by the snack area for side dishes.
Okay, we got sign-up sheets out by the snack area for multitude of sins.
Anything else we can sign up for?
Facility.
Okay, and it says on my notes here, pamphlets at the table on the back. I'm guessing that's for the SP21.
Sandra Campbell brought a bunch of community pamphlets for different things. They're really nice and they're on the back and you can just pick one up if you like one. There's a table at the back of the
Back of the room.
Yeah.
Fabulosity. Do we have any other announcements? Well, in case y'all don't know who I am, I'm Barbara Kelly. Welcome again. We ring the bowl in universal oneness and feel the vibration that unites us in love and peace. Our lighted candle represents the Christ light that is present in each and every one of us. If you haven't already, like I don't think I have yet, put your phones on stun. And that way we know that we won't have any extra visions of God appearing other than what Sandra brings us. If you would join me, please, in reading the mission for the Center of Universal Oneness. The Center for Universal Oneness is based on the place of support on their spiritual journey may join with others for mutual encouragement, inspiration, and guidance. The Center draws on those practices based in new thought and metaphysical approaches. The higher Christ consciousness provides the foundation. We strive to live in the oneness of love. And our vision statement, extending into the world faith, love, peace, and joy. And Doug will now lead us off in prayer.
Let us pray. Divine Spirit, we come together seeking your oneness and our belonging. It's been such a hectic, busy week for us. And we find that our contemplation of God gives us peace. It is in that stillness and silence that we find ourselves and the oneness of all. We rejoice, for we know that being one with God is being home and being in the good. Thank you, God. Amen.
Over my head, I hear music in the air. over my head. I hear music in the air. Over my head, I hear music in the air. God's presence is everywhere. Over my head, I hear music, I hear music, I hear music, I hear music. Oh, in the air, oh, over my head, I hear music in the air. The presence of God is everywhere. The presence of God is everywhere. The presence of God is everywhere. Over my head, I hear music, I hear music, I hear music, I hear music. Oh, in the air, oh, over my head, I hear music in the air. Oh, the presence of God is everywhere. The presence of God is everywhere. The presence of God is everywhere. Oh, think about how God's brought you. Think about how God's taught you. Think about how He's kept you. Think about it, never, ever, ever left you. Why don't you think about it? Why don't you think about it? Think about it, why don't you think about it? Why don't you think about it? Why? You can sing anytime. Why don't, you know the next three words? Why don't you, four words, why don't you think? Why don't you think? Oh, why don't you think about it? 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 Oh, the presence of God is everywhere. The presence of God is everywhere. The presence of God is everywhere. Let's go back to think about it. Oh, think about it. Why don't you think about it? Think about it. Why don't you think about it? Think about it. Why don't you think about it? Think about it. Why don't you think? Give me a why. Why? Now give me. Why don't? Why don't? Why don't you? Why don't you? I think I can. Why don't you think? Oh, why don't you think about it? Why don't you think about it? Why don't you think about it? Why don't you? Oh, the presence of God is everywhere. The presence of God is everywhere. The presence of God is everywhere. Think about it.
I just want to hear the music. That's what I came for. I don't know about you, but you know, they say when we sing, we pray twice. So we have been prayed up this morning. Thank you. Yes. Well, good morning to all of you. I'm Reverend Sandra Campbell, and I bring you greetings from Unity Temple on the Plaza, where I'm associate minister, and Unity World Headquarters, where I serve on the board of directors. So I brought you some our consciousness, all of our collective consciousness is taking us, because there's some great things happening at Unity World headquarters. We have 2 Airbnbs now that are world recognized. They've received several awards. From the time they first started, they were booked up for over a year. These are the original Fillmore homes. That is state of the art, and they're always booked, so get out there and see that. There's a grand hall coming. There's a 2020 campaign, and the 2020 campaign includes a lot of things, but the grand hall is probably one of the biggest, and that is where the Unity Village Chapel now resides. It will continue to reside there, but it's going to be sort of like this, only tables. If you've ever been to New Theater, it sort of looks like that. And the Lee Summit Symphony has been meeting at John Knox Village 4 times a year, and they've outgrown that space, and they can't get enough of all their people there. So they've already booked the Grand Hall before we've even started. For their 4 symphonies, and Goddard Foundation. If you're familiar with many of the campuses around the country, like my alma mater, Abilene University, Rockhurst University, and others have Goddard Performing Arts Centers, and the Goddard Family Foundation really does a lot with education, so they're philanthropists. Well, they now occupy an office that is just beautiful in the Silent Unity building. We have a lot of empty space around the village. And so they have an office there, and it's absolutely beautiful. So that was their first introduction to Unity, really, to be on the grounds. When they heard about the Grand Hall, they said, well, we're going to give you $1 million to help get that started. So they did. So it's going to be beautiful. We're not changing Unity. We're not changing Unity's basic tenets, the basic beliefs and principles. We're actually living the principles. We're walking our talk. So get out there and visit. I did bring some brochures. We have an outreach program that is dynamic, and you can go online and you can get, the Center for Universal Oneness can get those, and you can get them sent to this care facility, you can send them to hospice organizations, you can send them to anywhere you want, free of charge, even the shipping. And all we do is just ask for a love offering. So I usually go about once a month, and I just get a lot of those booklets and send in my love offering. I'll pick them up and I bring them. So I brought what few that I have, so that you all can enjoy them. There's on alcoholism and addiction, there's grief and loss, One Humanity, Many Stories, and in fact, you'll find that I have some articles in some of those booklets. So enjoy those, and don't forget Silent Unity, to tell everyone that you meet that there is a prayer ministry that's 24 hours a day, 365 days a year, over 100 years old, that just still reaches out to the world. And so enjoy that opportunity to share the unity message. And that's what I want to talk to you today about. What I found out is, in my ministry, many times people will come up to me afterwards and they'll say, so I'm new here, and sometimes they're not new, and they still want to know, what is unity? You ever had that question? Mm-hmm. What is unity? What is unity all about? What I decided to start doing is going back to what attracted me to unity as a 21-year-old in 1972. What brought me to this? What was it that resonated with me? Because we often see that many of the people attending unity churches nowadays have gray hair like me, and we see a lot of opportunities to minister to young people, but we've kind of forgotten, how do we do that? And I say we go back to the basics. I was 21, and it certainly got me interested in how I could change my life through these principles. So I always like to start off with something to really get you excited and want to listen to me. There was this man traveling along in his brand new sports car, and he was on a desolate country road. He didn't know exactly where he was, and he kind of lost track of time. He was just kind of wandering around. He might have even been texting, you know. And he drove into a ditch because he wasn't paying attention. Try as he may, he couldn't get that little sports car out of that ditch. It just kept spinning. There was mud, and it just kept spinning, getting deeper and deeper into a rut. And a farmer comes by on his horse. And the farmer sees the condition and sees the situation. He says, hey, you know, I think Buddy can get you out. Buddy's his horse. So he hitches Buddy to the bumper of this little car. And he says, pull, Sporty. And Buddy doesn't move. He says, pull, Jimmy. And Buddy doesn't move. He says, pull, Oscar. And Buddy doesn't move. And finally he says, pull, Buddy. And Buddy slowly eases the man's car out of the ditch. The man says, wait a minute, why did you call your horse by 3 different names before you called him his right name? He said, well, see, old buddy is blind. He can't see a thing. But if he thinks he's doing it all by himself, he won't even try. How many of us don't seek truth because we think we're doing it all by ourselves? You talk to someone who speaks a different religious language than you, and you feel like you're all by yourself. So you don't seek what's already there for you. So this is the way I got into unity. I was seeking something. Now, I've been raised in the Baptist church. I went to Baptist training unit. When I was a little girl, I was at what they call a sunbeam, you know, and you're learning the Christian teachings and so forth. But there was just something about that didn't quite resonate with me. It just didn't solve the issues that I was dealing with in my day-to-day life. And at 21, believe it or not, I had a lot of issues. I was married long before I was old enough to really be married or understand what love was. To a young man, both of us too young for that, but who didn't know who he was, and I certainly didn't know who I was. And I was trying to figure it all out. By 21, I was expecting my second child. My oldest was 4 at the time. And I was going through a lot of difficulties. And I just couldn't see, nobody could minister to me. And my family, who were very much religious, you know, very much spiritual, but nothing they said resonated. And so I wanted some answers, and I just couldn't find them. And this woman saw me crying in the restroom at church, at work. I worked for the federal government, so started at 19. I retired at 62, so I had a lot of years in government. And I worked for the federal government, and I was just in there boo-hoo crying. I was 8 months pregnant with my second child. And this woman comes in the restroom, and she says, you know, you're so beautiful. And I'm like, she must be talking to somebody else. Nobody else is in the restroom. And she said, I just don't understand why someone so beautiful and, you know, you're just glowing. You know, that's what they all say to pregnant women anyway. You're just glowing, and why are you crying? What could be so bad? And she couldn't get me to say much, but she said to me, are you a Christian? And I said, yeah. And she said, well, do you believe in the teachings of Jesus Christ? And I said, what I know, yeah. She said, well, if I bring you a book tomorrow, would you read it? So the next day, she brought me this book. I wish I brought it today. It's called Hidden Power for Human Problems by Frederick Bailey. B-A-I-L-L-E was, I believe, the spelling. And I read that book that night. So the next morning at work, I brought the book back, and she was very upset because she knew there's no way you even crack this book open. You know, I wouldn't have wasted my time, she said, if I had known you weren't going to read it. And I started reciting to her the things that I remembered from that book without even looking at the book that touched me. You know, when the student is ready, the teacher will appear. Isn't that the truth? So I told her, you know, I want to know more. You got anything else? She said, well, first of all, I'm amazed that you're 8 months pregnant, you have a 4-year-old, you're going through all these challenges, and you read this book overnight. I said, can't you tell I didn't get any sleep? So she took me to a meeting the following week, and there were a circle of people sitting in a circle in the family room of her neighbor's house. Now, I lived in Kansas City, Kansas, way out in western Wyandotte County, and she lived off Van Brunt in Kansas City, Missouri by the VA Medical Center. But she was determined not to have me drive, although I would drive to work every day. She drove out there, picked me and my little girl up, and we went back to her neighborhood. I sat there and listened to them talk about scripture and about principles that I'd never heard in that context before. And I was like a kid in a candy store. This was so new to me, and I was so hungry for this. The simple, same things I'd been taught, but in a simpler way. It made it easy for me to not only understand it, but to assimilate it, to digest it. And I was hooked. That was 1972. And what I've learned since then is we're always trying to take unity and put it into something else so other people can digest it. Instead of using unity teachings, they stand alone. They stand alone. We don't need, it's great to have other philosophies. Charles Fillmore said, unity is a classroom. And one of our textbooks is the Bible. Now notice I said one of our textbooks, because there are a lot of textbooks. a lot of textbooks, and we can gain from those textbooks. And we can do our homework, our internal work. And we can test ourselves on how well we're applying these principles. And that's why the Fillmores called this practical Christianity. Practical, simple. We don't need grandiose, big words. You know, we don't need big names who travel the world speaking. We don't need a TED Talk. We need principles, the basic unity teaching. So I brought a textbook that I dearly love, and it's called The 5 Principles by Reverend Ellen Debenport. And Ellen writes in this book that it was the great-granddaughter of the Fillmores, Connie Fillmore Basie, who came up with the simplified version of what the Fillmores taught. 5 basic unity principles. Now, people will say, well, does unity have a creed, or, you know, do you have to answer 20 questions or recite some kind of a creed? No. These are simple, irrefutable laws of the universe. And sometimes we get so wrapped up in trying to be profound that we miss out on the practicality of the principles. One of the Fillmore's greatest teachers was Dr. H. Emily Cady. And those principles that Connie Fillmore developed came from the book that was Cady's lessons that appeared in the weekly Unity magazine, the New Thought magazine. And the Fillmores talked her into turning that into a book, which was the first published book by Unity, called Lessons in Truth. Lessons in Truth. So the textbook that Joanne Franklin gave me, Hidden Power for Hidden Problems by Frederick Bailey, was one of the textbooks that helped me to understand my lessons for me in this class, in this classroom we call Unity. So today, let's go back to the basics. What is unity? So, the first principle of the 5 principles that Connie Fillmore Basie came up with to describe what she believed was a simplified version of what her grandparents and other teachers in New Thought were trying to get us to understand that are practical applications to any situation in your life. The first principle is, there is one presence and one power active in my life. One presence and one power. Now, there are those who will argue that no, but if there is only one presence and one power, then how do you explain evil? How do you explain the devil? How do you explain sin? If there is only one presence and one power, then God is in all, then God must also be evil. Some people argue that. Philosophers argue that. I say no, God is all good. And as Stephanie led us in that song, everywhere present. Now, we make choices that may be less than that. What is sin? But the belief in separation from your source. The belief in separation from God. Our own belief in separation. So God is everywhere. The presence of God is everywhere in all things, all the time. Now, the second principle is that if, in fact, I, according to the book of Genesis in the Old Testament and the creation story, if I am made in the image and likeness of this all-present, all-powerful, all-knowing, it all being, or beingness, then I must be good. Because God is good. God is all good, according to the principle. Now, how do you explain that when some people do bad things? So I was called to question on that recently when I was speaking at a coffee klatch at Village Shalom. I've been invited out there to speak now and then. My daughter's the HR director at Village Shalom. And they have what's called a coffee klatch, an informal gathering of the residents there. Most of them Jewish, some of them Christians, some of them not. Some atheists, agnostics, but not nice group of people. And Village Shalom is like this facility, only it's a whole community, like John Knox Village. It's a whole community, retirement community, assisted living, skilled nursing, all of that. And so I went to speak, and I thought I would explain to them what unity is about. And when I got to that second principle, one of their longtime residents, who happens to be Jewish, said to me, then you're telling me that Hitler was good? And I said, well, absolutely yes. Well, I don't agree. I said, well, let me ask you a question. When babies are born they born hateful? Do you think babies are born thinking, I'm going to kill a lot of people, I'm going to rob, I'm going to steal, I'm going to do all these bad things, I'm going to hurt people? He said, no. I said, then we are inherently good, but we make choices that separate us from our good. And he said, you know, I hadn't thought of it that way. That's Unity's second principle, that I am inherently good. So when you are watching TV or you see someone doing something that on the news, that you read something heinous, don't judge that person as bad. Because they are made in the same image and likeness of God as we all are, but they made bad choices. We just saw on the news this week a young lady who was a police officer in Texas who was convicted of murdering her neighbor. And we saw his brother, 18-year-old brother, go over. He asked the judge, could he give her a hug, please? And he hugged her. He said, I don't want to see you rot in jail. I love you. That is recognizing the divinity in a person, even if you don't agree with something they did, even if it's something as horrible as murdering a member of your own family, you can still see the good in them. You can see the good. That was a great example of Unity's second principle. Are you getting the principles and how they work in your life? The third principle, and this one's a goodie. Do you know you create your own experiences? Now, you may not be able to change your circumstances, but you can control your reaction to those circumstances. We create our heaven and our hell. We don't have to go anywhere. I grew up in a philosophy to believe that if you're suffering here on earth, you're going to have a wonderful time in heaven. Because those of us who suffer and are poor and don't have much and are downtrodden and treated badly, we're storing up our riches in heaven. You know, my mother would always say there will be a brighter day ahead. She was talking about this hereafter. Now, the only hereafter I know of is when I can't find something, and I go to look for it, and I go, what was I hereafter? And that happens a lot. So, heaven and hell are right here, right now. You create them in your own mind. Everything starts in the mind first. Creation itself, God mind. God mind. The idea, I'll make me a world. That whole story is our story. It's the story of human evolution. From Genesis to Revelation, it's about the human evolution consciousness. It's not to be taken literally, which we do, especially where I grew up. It's metaphysical. It's beyond the literal interpretation. So when this idea was established in God mind, the idea of God, the next step for that idea was to express it. So mind, idea, and expression is the Trinity. Father, Son, Holy Spirit. Mind, one God, one presence, one power. Idea, the Christ. Expression, bringing that out into our lives. Mind, idea, expression. We create our own heaven and our own hell. We don't have to go anywhere. We can create all the heat in our lives and everybody else's lives. And we create the joy. It's all how you perceive, how you look at it, how you think, how you believe, and how you act. That's how you create your reality. You could be having a terrible experience. And you've met people who you wonder, how do they smile? When you know they've gone through, or they're going through such hard times. Because it's their consciousness. They realize that this does not define them. What they're experiencing, what defines them is how they react, how they respond. That's where you create your own heaven and your own hell. Right here, right now. The fourth principle Now, we're so busy in our lives. Some of us reading everybody else's books and philosophies and trying to figure out where we can get the most instruction when all we need to do is go within. Now, I never grew up in a church where we meditated. We said it, let the words of my mouth and the meditations of my heart be acceptable in my sight. O Lord, my strength, my redeemer. In fact, we sang it. Coming into the church with Reverend Boyd, walking down the center aisle. Let the words of my mouth, let the words of my mouth, and the meditations of my heart be acceptable in thy sight. O Lord, teach me how to serve thee. O Lord, teach me how to pray. And then we had a certain way of singing the Lord's Prayer. When that was the whole essence of it, prayer and meditation. We would say the words, but I didn't learn anything about meditation until I came into Unity. And the first service I attended after Joanne introduced me to the little group, now we call those spirit groups. You know, nothing is new. This little group of people that sat in a circle and talked every Wednesday, just like the Fillmores started. They didn't plan to start a church or any kind of religious institution. They never even wanted to call Unity your center is the perfect word because that's what the Fillmores wanted. A center where people could gather, no matter what walk of life or faith they come from, and feel that they could get their questions answered and they were in the right place at the right time. And nobody judging that they were Baptist or Methodist or Lutheran or Catholic or Jewish or a Muslim, but they realized their connectedness. And we realize that connection with God through prayer and meditation. Communion with God. That's not something you need to do in front of anybody. You know, the old school religion I grew up with, you're supposed to profess with your mouth. You're supposed to say out loud. And my 99-year-old mother lives with me, and every now and then she's a praying woman, and every now and then she'll get ready to eat. She says, oh Lord, I forgot to say my grace. God forgive me. And I said, Mom, you already said your grace. No, I didn't say it. I said, yes, you did. Every thought is a prayer. Every thought is a prayer. Scripture tells us, before they call, I will answer. While they yet speak, I will have heard them. So you don't have to say a word out of your mouth. It's the meditation of your heart. The meditation of your heart. What are you thinking? How are you connecting with God? You need that quiet time. You need time to be in direct communion with the Spirit of God within you. And where is God? Jesus said to the disciples when they asked that question, and the Pharisees who were testing him before the crucifixion to prove that he was not the Messiah, not the Son of God, he said, don't look over here or over there, for the Spirit of God is in the midst of you. In other words, the Spirit of God is in you. The presence of God is everywhere, and it is in you. So that communion is between you and your source, your Creator, God. Now, the fifth principle is the most important principle in unity. No matter, you don't have to memorize any of this. Just walk your talk. The fifth principle is I live the truth I know. I walk my talk, I make a difference. If you're doing that, you'll be automatically doing all the others. When you live the truth you know. Now, when we know better, we do better, right? So we can only teach what we know. We can only practice what we know. But as we grow and learn and experience and open our minds, we grow in spirit and we grow in truth. And when we practice who we truly are, not trying to be someone else, not trying to adopt someone else's philosophy, but who we truly are, then we're walking our talk. And that's the most important of all the 5 principles in unity. Is this making any sense? So I'm going to summarize with, I have a Sunday morning metaphysical Bible interpretation class. And Rosetta Bard is one of my congregants who attends that class. And thank you, Rosetta. She came with me today. And in fact, she lives in Lewisburg, Kansas, but she drove to Lee Summit and drove here. She insisted she would drive so I could have quiet time. And it wasn't quiet because Rosanna and I both like to talk. And we're happy that way. But in the metaphysical Bible class, we decided to go back into the four Gospels, the canonical Gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. And what sets John apart is exactly what unity is about. Matthew, Mark, and Luke talk about salvation as being saved by Jesus Christ, right? By the Christ or the Jesus, saved. We often say that Jesus saved me from whatever. And salvation is the crucifixion and resurrection. We have to die to this world and be born again. Well, John was a Gnostic. And Gnosticism, their salvation in Gnosticism is knowledge. You are saved by knowledge. You shall know the truth, and the truth shall set you free. That's from the book of John. And there's a reason for that, because the Gnostics had a very strong belief that it is our knowledge, it is gaining knowledge, it is that textbook experience, it is that personal experience that you put in the context of real life that will enable you to rise above your circumstances. It is the truth. And to know does not mean, in the original language, Aramaic, which Jesus most, and Hebrew, which Jesus mostly spoke, it does not mean just to gain knowledge. I can read a book and I can remember what it says and I can recite my ABCs. It doesn't mean the knowledge. It means to practice. You will practice the truth. And the practice or experience of that truth is what will set you free. So I want you to, if you don't take anything else home with you today that I've said, remember these two things. The most important of the unity principles is I walk my talk. I live the truth I know, I make a difference. And the second most important thing I want you to remember is the book of John, the Gnosticism way of interpreting what this life is all about, what we're here for. You shall know the truth, and you shall practice and experience that truth. And it is that practice and experience of your truth that will set you free. So I want to close with what I learned in the 7th grade, and it didn't make sense to me until years later. Standing in front of the rest of the student body, being inducted into the National Junior High School Honor Society, Mrs. Williams, who was our coach, had each one of us recite either a verse or a poem. And she gave me Proverbs. And I didn't understand that verse at all for many, many years. But it certainly ties into walking our talk. Get wisdom. And with all you're getting, get understanding. What unity is about is acquiring spiritual understanding. It goes beyond the physical and the literal, but is internalized. It's from experience. Then you will know the truth. And the truth will set you free. Namaste. We'll now move into that time that we so treasure in unity. And I hope that you don't just do this when you come to service on Sunday. Make this a part of your daily practice. Going within to spirit is your opportunity to connect with the truth that you know. To remain centered and focused on who you are and what you're called to be. Today's daily word is spiritual being. I am a living expression of God. As you hear those words, I want you to find that really comfortable position in these wonderful seats. Rest your mind for just a moment. Relax. Let go of anything that may be distracting you. Anything you may be holding on to mentally, physically. Remove anything from your lap that could be a distraction. Take a deep, relaxing breath. And hold it to the count of 3. And then release it.
Let's do that again. Taking a deep, relaxing breath. Hold it to the count of 3, and then release it. And one more time, and as you do, hear these words as your own. I am a living expression of God. Unity's second principle. I am made in the image and likeness of God. Therefore, regardless of my circumstances, I am inherently good. And the daily word goes on to read, in her classic book, Lessons in Truth, H. Emily Cady wrote, I am spirit, perfect, holy, harmonious. Spirit can be defined as the invisible life and intelligence underlying all physical things. That means I am much more than my body, my thoughts, and my emotions. I am a living expression of God. As I grow in spiritual understanding, my life reflects my true nature more and more clearly. I know wholeness, even when my body is experiencing illness. I see abundance, even when outer circumstances indicate lack. I embrace possibilities for good, even when my limited awareness cannot yet see the good. I live my human experience as the true spiritual being that I am. I am a living expression of God. There is nothing in all the universe for me to fear, for I have faith in that living expression of God in me. All else is a lie. I live the truth I know. I am open and receptive to God's living spirit of truth. And I listen for that still small voice, speaking words of truth in my soul, in silence. you now to ever so gently return your attention to this time and this place. Feeling renewed and refreshed. Take a deep, relaxing breath. And take these words as your own. In the book of Genesis, the first chapter, the 27th verse, we read, "So God created humankind in his image. In the image of God, he created them." Unity's second principle. I am made in the image and likeness of God. Therefore, I am inherently good. When I taught Sunday school at Unity of Baltimore back in the 70s, the music teacher, like Stephanie, who's a great music teacher, was also the director of the Sunday school. She taught music at one of the elementary schools. And so we sang such wonderful songs. I want to close this meditation with one of those that has stayed in my ears and on my heart all these years later. And it's something I wish that I had learned when I was a little girl. Because I can only imagine where some of those children, they were children then, but they're adults now, who memorized that song and how it played out in their lives. I know a secret and I want to tell. I want to tell. I want to tell. I know a secret and I want to tell. God is in you and me. So nothing but good can happen to me. For God is all there is. Nothing but good can happen to me. For God is all there is. And so it is. Amen.
Thank you, Sandra. I regularly learned some of the unity principles, and I appreciate that. Now it's time for our offering. Take a silent moment, please, and prepare your offertory gifts. And we'll say our prayer and pass the baskets. Divine love, through me, blesses and multiplies all that I have, all that I give, and all that I receive. And I am joy-filled and grateful.
Like you, I also was reminded of some things, even on a deeper level with those principles. And
I'm going to call you the choir, and you are inherently good singers. And this song and the closing song is an audience participation piece of which both I'm sure you're familiar with. So wherever you're familiar, please join in. Use me, oh God, I stand before you, and here I'll abide as you show me all that I must do. I used to think God was the sun, God is the sun, but God's so much more than the earth and the stars and all of creation. God is creator, all in all, needing us to shine its light as me, as makes all things new, needing us to shine its light as me, as you, so use me. Oh God, I stand before you, and here I'll abide as you show me all that I must do. And God needs us to shine its light. Oh, God needs us to shine its light. God needs us to shine its light as me, as you, so use me. Oh God, I stand for you, and here I'll abide as you show me all that I must do. Show me all that I must do. Show me all that I must do.
Thank you, Stephanie, that was great. Now, are there any concerns we'd like to share that we can pray about for you and through the week?
I have one.
Yes, ma'am.
I don't know how many of you know Reverend Joanne Landreth, who's now retired from ministry, but she's having a few health challenges, and I just ask you to join in prayer with Joanne.
We'll add Julian to our list of prayers. Anybody else? Vicki?
I don't know, but I'm thinking that Karen and Ron Ives are both having health challenges as well. We haven't seen them in a while.
All right, Karen and Ron. Sherry?
I understand Roger Bidwell has had health challenges recently, and I believe he's healing, doing better, and I would just ask that we pray for that to continue.
Okay, we got Roger as well.
I forgot one more.
Yes, ma'am.
Gary Ravenrock. Gary was a community minister at St. Joe. I don't know if you remember that, but he's retired. And last Sunday after service, down in Fellowship Hall, he had a stroke. And he's been released. I visited him twice this week. He's been released now, and he lives in Lee Summit. He's back home, but I know he's going to be rehabbed. So please keep him in prayer. He's a longtime Unity minister, and then he worked in HR in Unity. And so, and also, Jerry Long and I go back in our careers with the Federal Aviation Administration, and I brought Jerry into Unity 30 years ago, I guess. And I know he's been active occasionally here, and Jerry and Brenda have had some challenges, especially Brenda health-wise, so I just ask you to hold them in prayer.
We can do that, certainly. Doug?
I would ask the community to hold Terry Whiting in their prayers. Terry is, as you know, a caregiver for his mother and father and sister, and he's been reaching out to other organizations for assistance, but there are complications that have prevented that assistance from taking place. So he's carrying the load pretty much by himself, and it's wearing him to a nubbin. So I would appreciate that we hold him in our prayers.
Anybody else? Vicki?
I think we'd be remiss as a community to not hold Myra, Reverend Myra, in our prayers as well.
Agree with that, yes. Okay. Join me please in our prayer for the concerns we mentioned. Centering our lives and minds in prayer. We let go of any thoughts of worry or challenge and simply rest in stillness. We know that our source of strength and peace comes from God alone. We give thanks for divine order and trust that we are all held in the power of grace. Amen. I'd just like to remind you that although they're not in Kansas City right now, that Dennis and Susan Breed are also available to offer prayer. Sandra, Stephanie, thank you so very much.
I want to let you know who Stephanie is. Michael Gott, you know Reverend Michael Gott, Unity of Houston, stole Stephanie from us for a while. 2 years almost. So he found out how talented she is. She was at Unity Village Chapel on a music team for many years. She's a music teacher. She's been in a local school, Kansas State School, charter school, Hogan High School. She has taught and been principal at many schools. And when I was asked to take over the Wednesday evening service at Unity Temple, I was starting from scratch. And so I knew Stephanie and I know how talented she is. And she said yes. And she became a member of my ministry, my music team. And she and David Adams and Alex Cordero do an outstanding job. And then Michael Gott said, I want you to come and in February, do Black History music, like gospel fest and that sort of thing. So they loved her at Houston, and Michael had a plan. So he was trying to get her for good. She would fly down on Fridays after school and fly back late Sunday night and be back in her classroom on Monday. Now, how she kept up with her lesson plans and all that, I don't know. But she did that for over a year, 2 years. And that meant she didn't have time for us on the Wednesday service. So Michael now has hired a full-time, because that was not only expensive, but it was taxing. And there was no way for her to quit her career and do that full-time. So I am so grateful that he found someone else. She is a minister in her own right. She is a minister of music, if there's ever one. And someone that you might want to consider having every now and then, because she can really enliven. So Unity Village has the Martin Luther King ceremony. She's the one that leads the choir there. We haven't done it for a couple of years, but and I think that's, and at Unity Southeast, when I was an intern, she was there. She and Reverend Gloria Holt are very close, like we are, all three. And Reverend Gloria is a musician, a pianist and singer, so she would have Stephanie come and sing, and that's when I got so enlivened with all these songs. So I want to thank you for having us. Thank you for inviting us, and thank you, Stephanie, for saying yes. We'll be back.
Well, I personally am looking forward to both of you being back soon.
Well, I've been working with Stephanie about coming for one of the Advent services. Do y'all think that would be a good choice? I got to get her to answer my emails. I think she doesn't like me. I'm on it.
There you go.
I'm trying to find time to sleep.
There's no rest for the weary, or the wicked, whichever you are.
And next Sunday, Lily Berkeley will be our speaker, and Paul Carter will be our musician, so be sure to join us for that.
No, it's great.
Graham.
I'm sorry?
Graham Cruikshank.
That didn't get Graham Cruikshank.
My fault. So I know, I take responsibility.
Like this,
Mickey's fault.
Thank goodness.
this is what my little script says.
It's all good.
That I was gonna say. So Lily's our speaker, and Graham Cruikshank is our musician, and we always know how wonderful Graham is, and I'm sure Lily will be equally as good. So Doug will lead us out in prayer, and I believe you have one more song for us, Stephanie?
Absolutely.
Awesome.
Fabulosity. You have that word to you.
I like that word. I use it frequently.
Just heard it.
Let us pray. We thrust our ways to Him and say Amen. In peace we will continue in His way and trust entrust all things to him. In confidence we wait for his answers as we ask his will in everything we do. He loves God's Son as we would love him, and he teaches us how to behold him through his eyes and love him as he does. You do not walk alone. God's angels hover near and all about. His love surrounds you, and of this be sure, that I will never leave you comfortless.
Amen. Will you do me a favor and try to circle up as we can? This is a song that you recognize. I'm just going to add a little twist to it, thanks to Faith Rivera. This Little Light of Mine. And just join in and follow along as you can, as you will. And this is a song that is one of the songs I like to sing whenever I go out, but it's also a song that we sing on Wednesdays at Wednesday night service with Sandra. This Little Light of Mine. Let me get up in here somewhere. I'm getting about a singer. Oh no, we gotta get this kind of good. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. Sing with me. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. Let it shine, let it shine, gonna let it shine, shine. Everybody, shine, shine. You know you want to shine, shine. All around the world, shine, shine. You got it, everywhere. Everywhere I go, we're gonna let it shine. We're gonna let it shine. Oh yeah. Everywhere we go, what we gonna do? We're gonna let it shine. Everywhere we go. Everywhere we go, we're gonna let it shine. Let it shine. Let it shine. Gonna let it shine, shine. Everybody, shine, shine. You know you want to shine, shine. All around the world, shine. Repeating after me. When there's life in the soul, when there's life in the soul, there is beauty in the person. There is beauty in the person. When there's beauty in the person, when there's beauty in the person, there is harmony in the home. There is harmony in the home. When there's harmony in the home, when there's harmony in the home, there is honor in the nation. When there's honor in the nation, oh, there is peace in the world. No more living in fear. We're gonna let it shine. We're gonna let it shine. Yes, we will. No more living in fear. No, we're gonna let it shine. No more living. No more living in fear. No way. We're gonna let it shine. Let it shine. Let it shine. Gonna let it shine, shine. Everybody, shine, shine. You know you want to shine, shine. All around the world, shine, shine. All my brothers and sisters, shine, shine. All around the world, shine, shine. You know you want to shine, shine. Oh yeah, shine one more time. Everybody, let's shine, shine, shine. All around the world, shine, shine. You know you want to shine, shine. Shine, shine, shine. Shine, shine. Thank you. Have an awesome week. Keep looking up.